So let me ask you then, since we've mentioned Werner and Nicola 1.0 and 2.0, let me ask you this very personal question. Now, you have been, philosophically speaking, at the cutting edge of technology and science fiction. Yet, we are talking over an old-fashioned landline, and in your own email to me, you sort of self-admitted that you're very, quote, I am very low-tech here.
Right.
So how do you square this? How do you explain this? Isn't that sort of paradoxical that Vernor Vinge, the person who coined the term the technological singularity, is self-admittedly very low-tech and doesn't use Skype even, and so
on? Actually, that is as we're running out of time here, that actually is a fairly large topic. One part of it is that that we didn't touch on in this talk, in this interview, is I have lots of misgivings about. I really have not participated in the social networking stuff. Despite the book Rainbow's End, that is one angle of participation in technology that I have not done. Mm-hmm. And part of it is that I just don't have the attention time to do it. Mm-hmm. Part of it is that I think a trend that is bad is that if you get a big positive feedback from doing something, and if the risks of doing it, and I'm not talking about singularity risks here at this time, but the risks of doing it are unquantified, it's very easy to convince yourself to do more and more of this behavior that's rewarding. And the whole thing with losing privacy and financial privacy, and this I think is the risks are underestimated. Mm-hmm. And that one thing that that has been found, I think, with simple embezzlement, is that automation actually makes embezzlement much rarer, but the ticket price of each event becomes much larger. Mm-hmm. In other words, once
the damage is greater.
Right. I think that the great danger, and it's especially epitomized by the digital Gaia scenario, mm-hmm. is that it transforms the universe into something where anything can happen. In other words, what would it be like if the physical universe were as unpredictable as financial market? Mm-hmm. So, interviewing Taleb, the guy who wrote the Black Swan, mm-hmm. would be something I think you'd find very interesting. I don't know whether that's a book that you have looked at.
I've heard about the book.
Yeah, it's actually a very important book. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if the world got transformed into a place, and it is this is happening, where basically exponent overflow can happen about real world issues. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not just for inside your computer. It's also for things having to do with everyday life. That actually makes a person very uneasy. And I have all sorts of concerns about, how that is being put into place. Mm-hmm. And, in a way, what I think and hope will happen is that we'll get the frictional, that is the bad things that could happen, will happen at a rate that they can be addressed. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, what we're going through is 50 million years, the equivalent of 50 or 400 million years of biological evolution. We're going through it in a matter of 40 or 50 years. Mm-hmm. And you really have to be on your toes. And basically, I'm cautious enough that I'm not one of the first adopters.
But aren't you scared you're going to get left behind?
A real possibility.
Because that's the upside is you get to keep your privacy and your safety in that sense, but the downside is that you wouldn't be riding the wave. Right, and I've often wondered, for instance, it's almost a cliche that young people are totally
cavalier about their own privacy.
Absolutely.
And to me, that means one of two things: either they're not clear on the principle, they're making a serious mistake. Either that's one, or they realize that in 10 or 15 years they'll be running the show, and society is going to change. So there's another set of interviews, like with David Brin and the Transparent Society type stuff. You could imagine a different society where these things are just taken in a different way, and the fact that there's some real strange clip of you on YouTube somewhere, when you're 17, 18, that really just doesn't count.
Let's bring our interview here to a close with the second last question, which is, I know you were writing a book last time when we were exchanging emails. Perhaps you'll be willing to share a little bit about your latest project with us, and we will be able to get it off the shelves.
I am just, as we speak, I am finishing up correcting the second pass page proofs to my novel, The Children of the Sky, which actually is now visible for pre-order on Amazon. And this is a sequel to my novel, A Fire Upon the Deep. And it takes place about 10 years later. It takes place essentially entirely on the Tynes world, which was where most of A Fire Upon the Deep took place.
And you said it's available to pre-order on Amazon, but when do you expect it would ship?
Yeah, the publication date is some date in October 2011, so this year.
Great. I'm looking forward to get my hands on it and read it.
Great.
Excellent. All right. So usually I have the habit of closing my interview with the last question, which is, if you have one single message to our listeners today, what would you like it to be?
I think an exhortation to optimism and intelligent involvement in what's going on.
Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit in a couple?
No, chiefly because then we would go on for some time more. But basically, there are all sorts of terrible things that can happen. The future cannot be predicted. There's all sorts of terrible things that can happen. In my opinion, the most likely of those terrible things are very mundane, like war. That the things that we are been concerned about for most part in this interview have enormous upsides. They are worth the attention of people who have any intellectual interests at all, and there's probably some varieties of them that are of concern. But that overall we are in a situation where we can surpass the wildest dreams of optimism of previous generations. And in fact, that's the chief source of the nervous making, I think. If you really start thinking that you can get everything that's ever been dreamed of, then you have to start looking at what those dreams were. Because if you come down to implementing some of them, you're confronted with definitions that you finally have to get clear about.
So we can surpass the wildest dreams of optimism. I like that.
Yeah, I am very happy every time I see every time I see all the wonderful things that are happening in this area.
Fantastic. Well, on this note, then I would like to thank Vernor Vinge for taking over an hour of his time today to be with us. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Vernor.
thanks, Nicola.